Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Heisenbuttle,
And I'm Mike Carlson.
and welcome to the View from the U.
Okay, Brian, big week of college football action, headlined by another huge upset. More on that a little bit later, but I'm going to go right into the Heisman race right now. Jameis Winston, you look at his stat line this week, only 2 touchdowns and a 90% completion percentage, which, hey, that isn't bad, but you're probably wondering 2 touchdowns. Well, the reason he only had 2 touchdowns is because Florida State absolutely blew out Syracuse. Jameis Winston only got to play a half, but I guarantee if he had gotten in for that second half, we're staring down the barrel of 6 touchdowns, maybe a 99% completion percentage because the guy's just that good right now. So, for me, he's still in the front. He's still the front runner in my Heisman race. 2 huge victories. And then I looked at his completion percentage, Brian. He is right now completing around 71% of his passes, which is unheard of at this level. And you want to talk about what scouts love in a quarterback? It's his ability to throw the ball on a dime, and they say Winston just has that ability. That's completion percentage is really one of the stats that sets an average quarterback away from a really great quarterback. And Winston has a sparkling completion percentage. So right now he's still in my Heisman race. On to the next one. Bryce Petty had a huge game this week, Brian. 5 total touchdowns, just a huge day for him. Baylor rolled in their game, and 34 total touchdowns, 1 interception, over 31,000 yards of total offense in this total offense for him this year. That's huge. So right now he is in firmly. I think firmly he is in that second, third spot, kind of dodging for position with Johnny Manziel. Johnny actually didn't play this week. He was on a bye, but he will be having a huge test against LSU, and I think that if he wants to set himself, Johnny wants to set himself above a Bryce Petty, he has to win this game against LSU. He's shown that he's been able to compete in the spotlight, but he's been let down for some reason or another. A bad defense, a couple drop passes here and there. Maybe he didn't get the ball when it really counted. But then now, Brian, I want to highlight a guy. I call him Mr. Irrelevant in my Heisman race, Jordan Lynch out of NIU. You probably have never heard of NIU as a viewer. If you have, props to you. You're an amazing college football fan because I could not even name what conference they were from. NIU, they do play in the Mid-American Conference. I got to check my notes. Yep, the Mid-American Conference. That is the MAC, for those of you familiar with your acronyms. And, Brian, this guy, he's great. He's a great quarterback. He really is. 34 total touchdowns this year, 34 over around 3,500 yards of total offense, 5 interceptions. A 65% completion percentage, and this guy, he's a great quarterback, Brian. He just gets dinged by the fact that he plays in the Mid-American Conference, the MAC, and when you adjust his QBR for that kind of stuff, and if you would compare him to a guy like Jameis Winston, if you compare him on that same scale, thankfully, since I'm not a mathematician, ESPN does all this for me. He is at a 55.5 QBR, a 65.5 QBR, excuse me, which in ESPN's total quarterback ranking, a 100 is a perfect and a 0 is really bad. So you're finding Jordan Lynch right somewhere, in the middle of that range there. And Brian, I just want to highlight this guy. He's one of my unsung heroes, I think, in the Heisman race. He puts up good numbers year after year. He's not going to win the Heisman this year by any means, but he's one of those guys that he's going to give your opposing defense some trouble. He kind of started to last year against Florida State in that Orange Bowl game. Couldn't do it. I saw this guy's stat line, and I feel like this is a guy who deserves to be highlighted for his accomplishments and for what he's done, despite the fact that he's in a bad conference. You got to give this guy all the props in the world, Brian. He's done everything perfectly in the MAC conference. He plays for a great NIU team. Just sadly won't get that Heisman recognition that so many of his contemporaries do. So really, in summation, Brian, we're talking here close Heisman race. You got Winston firmly at the number 1 spot, and then you have Johnny Manziel and Bryce Petty kind of jockeying 2 and 3. And the only reason I didn't move Johnny Manziel down was because it'd be unfair to ding a guy for not playing in his bye week. So we're not about that here at the View from the U, dinging guys because they didn't play. So hopefully, Johnny's going to come away with a win against LSU. That would be huge. I think that would set him above, Oklahoma. I think it would set him above Baylor, but then again, Bryce Petty, He's got a game of that caliber coming this weekend too, but we'll touch on that later. So now I'm going to send it over to you. So give us the Heisman breakdown, Brian. What's up?
It's funny that you.
Heisman breakdown, the top 25 breakdown. That's my bad.
Well, that's all right. A quick note on Jordan Lynch. Since he joined the MAC and he's been doing so well, there have been talks to change the name of the conference to the Big MAC. So there's a touch of humor today. But I mean, Jordan Lynch, you really have to praise this guy. I mean, if you want to talk about a small conference quarterback making the best with sort of the not so great receivers around him, this is a guy that may not win the Heisman, but when you look at it as far as the draft, this guy's value is like Teddy Bridgewater, it just goes way, way up.
I definitely think so too, and you know what? It's sad to see a guy get dinged because he doesn't play in the strongest conference in the world. I mean, you look at Kellen Moore. Obviously, his value got dinged huge because he played for Boise State. So it'll be great to see him going forward, and maybe there's a huge argument going on right now. Do you let NIU play in a BCS championship? Not a BCS championship game, but one of those 4 BCS games between the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, and of course the big one itself. But that one is of course reserved for the 1 and 2 in the nation. So it'll be interesting to see going forward. What if they let NIU do anything, and maybe if they can be a bowl buster for one of those huge super conference teams. So it's an interesting storyline to follow, and all the props in the world to Mr. Lynch down there at Northern Illinois University.
Yeah. As far as BCS bowls, it does beg the question, should NIU or Fresno State have the edge? Mountain West a little bit of a bigger conference. NIU didn't play well against Florida State. It's just a lot of things that are up in the air about this team.
Exactly. So, Brian, huge top 10 shakeup this weekend. Give us the breakdown, my man. What's it looking like right now?
All right. So the first thing I want to touch on, and usually with the top 25, I'm either very happy with it or very unhappy with it. And this week, sadly, is the latter. I am not very happy with the way these standings turned out. And that's not just because Stanford lost. I did think they were very generous with Stanford, given how inconsistent they are. But the first 2 teams I want to spotlight are Ohio State number 3 and Baylor number 4. Mike, this made me so mad when I saw this. I just cannot explain it, because putting aside that I detest Ohio State more than any other team in the country, Baylor had a huge win against a huge conference opponent who's been playing well, and Ohio State gave up 35 points against an Illinois team who hasn't won a Big Ten game since 2011. Mike, when you look at this Ohio State team, all the hype is Braxton Miller. That's really all they are. Their defense is not, they're not at all big contenders on the defensive front. They don't really have the ability there, so why are they the number 3 team in the nation if they can give up points like that? And if you look at Baylor, they're just so fantastic. I mean, you've talked to them. You've spoken of them as the new Oregon, and that's exactly what they are. They're just that exciting, quick, dynamic offense that we saw in 2010 when Oregon went to the national championship. But
and I think you look at, sorry to interrupt you there, Brian, but I think just because they have the longest winning streak in the country, I think that's why they're up there. I mean, you think when they lose a game, and they have to at one point in time, that they're just going to drop in the rankings, because I saw that game against Illini as a University of Illinois as a cupcake game, Brian. I mean, that is one that's out there on a silver platter. Go get it. Go put up 70. Go work that offense. Bring in the third stringers. Have a lot of fun. But, I mean, to allow 35 points to an Illini team, I mean, that does not warrant a 3 spot. So, continue.
Yeah, and besides that, they allowed 20 points to Buffalo in Week 1. And, I mean, they dropped in the rankings then, so, hey, why not now? I mean, the opportunity's open. But the bigger tragedy of all of this is that Oregon, their position was not hurt by them wearing brown uniforms. If you saw this game, I am sorry, you may need to get LASIK, because those were hideous. They're so bad that it reflects poorly on a team that has a quarterback like Marcus Mariota, and that's all that you notice. But on a bit more of a rational topic, Michigan State surpassed UCLA this week. Michigan State moved up to 13, I believe, and UCLA down to 14. And Mike, I do not agree with this. I think the reason for that was because UCLA only had a 10-point win over Washington. But people gotta understand that Washington is still a very good team. They had a very tough schedule and lost to some very good teams. And I just don't understand that. I mean, Michigan State is definitely going to the Big Ten championship, but there was really no reason for me to believe that they're better than this UCLA team this week. And another team that I like to spotlight that I'm really surprised about is that Central Florida still keeps its spot at 17. When I saw them almost bite the bullet to a horrible Temple team, no conference wins this year. I thought, oh well, just gonna say goodbye and send them out of the standings. But no, they kept their position, and granted that was very clutch play by them. But if you're given a run for your money by a team like Temple, it really does beg the question: does a small conference team who has trouble against their equally small conference opponents deserve a spot in the top 25 with the big divisions? And Mike, I know you're a supporter of the small divisions. I know you love NIU. I love that, but with the weakness that this UCF team showed this previous week, I'm not sold on them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, there are better teams out there, I think, and UCF, they're in it. All the props in the world to them. That's great for that university that they're in the top 25. But you know what? I think with your Oregons and your Stanfords and your Alabamas and your Ohio States of the world, I think that you got to give those teams, those powerhouses, a little bit of a longer leash in the top 25. But I mean, I think going forward, the BCS with granted the BCS is they're coming to a close here this year, and moving that playoff system next year. But I think that going forward, I think with some of those conference teams, those small conference teams, that you got to give them a shorter leash. You really do. I think that they have to go out there and perform well to kind of stay in that top 25. Because being in a small conference, I mean, Ohio State, if they're in a small conference like that, they'll dominate they'll dominate week in and week out. And I think that going forward, those big conference teams, they deserve that longer leash. I mean, we saw Stanford drop only 5 positions in this week's poll because despite a loss to a USC team that just playing inspired football, give them all credit in the world, but not one of the best teams that USC has ever fielded in their history. So I think going forward, those small conference teams, you got to give them a shorter leash. You got to force them to go out there and perform week after week because there are better teams on that waiting list outside the top 25 that kind of deserve to be there, I think. So, you know what, it'll be interesting. The BCS, of course, coming to a close these next couple weeks. We're going to be rid of it next year completely. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out going forward. What teams get picked in that 14 playoff. But I think going forward right now, you got to give those small conference teams that short leash.
And what a coincidence that you bring up USC, because the next team on my list is USC. Now, this is a team, I don't think that the Stanford win was a fluke. I mean, they were one of the teams that I thought about recommending for last week, but I chose Duke over them. I mean, Coach O's come in and completely turned this team around. I mean, this is a team that was the laughingstock of Southern California when UCLA won the Pac-12 South last year. And now, I mean, they are back, and they're pretty much unstoppable. Their run defense is insane. Their offense is playing well. And this is a team where they're just hitting on all cylinders. And I do think they have I would like to see them go to the Rose Bowl. I think they do well in the Rose Bowl, but with the division standings and that loss to Arizona State, sadly, it may not happen. And Minnesota is finally in the top 25. Thank the powers that be. They deserve it so much. They've been playing so well, and it's nice to see them there. And yet, Duke isn't. This is the thing that troubled me, because Minnesota had a bye week, so I don't see exactly why they should move up, and Duke had a huge win over Miami that puts them with their destiny in their hands. And I mean, I just don't understand it. It's, of the 5 major conferences that I consider, which are SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, and Pac-12, this is the only conference where one of the division leaders is not in the top 25. And I just don't think it's fair to this Duke team that's been playing so well. And then finally, I want to round it out with Georgia. They may be a 4-loss team. They're not going back. But Aaron Murray is definitely in to break some skulls. They're just going to annihilate whoever they play in a bowl game, because those injuries may have set him back. But Aaron Murray is healthy, and he's hitting on all cylinders. So, Mike, I'd like to bring you on because one of the huge BCS upsets, as we know, is USC beating Stanford. So, Mike.
Brian, this is really cool for me to watch because you got USC, one of, we're both juniors in high school. USC is one of my, prospective colleges. that I'm taking a good look at, and then you got Stanford with yourself there. You'd love to go there. So it was an interesting kind of battle. I did watch the game day coverage. It was really cool to watch. You know what? And USC played inspired football. I mean, let's just start there. Coach O has been just an amazing turnaround. And Brian, it shows you the difference coaching makes. You got a guy like Lane Kiffin, at USC kind of stunted in their play, but then, Coach O takes over, kind of this happy-go-lucky, let's go out there, let's have fun kind of guy. And USC's flourished under it. And I want to highlight the play of their quarterback, Mr. Kessler, down there at the University of Southern California. This guy, he's played great for a USC quarterback. I mean, they haven't gotten a great rep these last couple years with your Mark Sanchez's, your Matt Barkley's, your Matt Leinert's, and your Carson Palmer's. They haven't gotten a really great rep. But I think Kessler, he's playing inspired football. He's playing great football right now. This USC team, Brian, just playing, they're playing amazing football. I kind of scoffed at the notion that a game day would go down to cover this game, Stanford and USC. I mean, USC has 3 losses. Stanford, of course, only with 2, and still very much a powerhouse team. But Mr. Kessler down there did a great job of managing that Stanford defense. We talked about it last week, how Stanford is transitioning from, more of a quarterback type of university to a hard-nosed university, of course, led by Shane Scov down there at linebacker. But he did amazing. I mean, Cody Kessler did amazing against a Stanford defense that's extremely advanced, extremely athletic. I mean, you got athletes on both sides of the ball. Mr. Scov is a very tough guy to, read and to game plan around as a quarterback, but he played well. And Brian, it doesn't hurt to be playing down there in Southern California either. I mean, those USC fans were out in force. Everyone was out there in force. I mean, I think Dr. Dre, the rapper, talked to him before. Snoop Dogg talked to him before. I think every major celebrity who went to USC ever gave them a good old pep talk before this game. So, it is really cool to watch. And, this USC team, Brian, we talked about it. We live here in Denver. So what? Jack Del Rio, he went down there and interviewed during the Broncos bye week. But I'm launching my campaign now to keep Coach O the coach at USC. I think some guys just connect better with college students than other guys. And I think Coach O is one of those guys. This guy, I think he has a bright future as a coach. And I'd love to see him hired over, your Jack Del Rios or your Kevin Sumlins. So it'll be really cool to see going forward. And I'm glad. I think it's good for all of college football to have those USC Trojans firing on all cylinders again.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we touched on last week is Stanford defense. Shane Scov coined it the party in the backfield, and they were not in the backfield that game. I mean, the USC offense really sort of had their way with him, which is really a problem for Stanford, which is why I think their current ranking is generous, because they may be a good team, but they are horribly inconsistent. Because you can go from just destroying a great team like Arizona State one week, and then just losing a game because of a defense that isn't quite sound the week after. So it's really a problem for Stanford. And while they may not go to the Rose Bowl, which brings a tear to my eye, I mean it is sort of fitting, because they need to play better more often. They need to play consistently like an Alabama or like a Florida State if they want to have the spot in those good BCS bowls.
Exactly, and it's a great win for USC. It was really cool. I sadly missed a lot of the game. I was going to a movie with the family, and but I kept the feed on Twitter going, the ESPN Score Center going. Really happy to see USC get a win here, and it's great for a BCS shakeup, I think, because at Stanford I think was headed on a collision course for a huge BCS conflict, with 2 losses. We're with one loss and then now with 2 losses. So it's really cool. Great shakeup. So Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you. What was your call? What game did you have again?
I had Duke versus Miami.
Duke versus Miami. And you called this one, my friend. You called it. You texted me and you called it and it happened. Give us some more insight. This is really cool.
All right, so this game was very surprising to me. I picked Duke to win. I had a lot of confidence in them. But the biggest surprise was Brandon Connett, the Duke quarterback who accounted for all of Duke's touchdowns. And this guy just came out of the blue. I mean, I've been looking at this Duke team and thinking it's Boone's team. He is the quarterback. He is the man with his hands on the switch. And this guy came in and just blew out this Miami defense. He did super well. And that's really the only way to put it. He did so well, and he probably won't be playing backup much longer because of And I'll say it again, he just played so well. This Duke defense did a great job managing the Miami offense that really earned a name for itself earlier in the season. And really, hats off to David Cuckles, the Duke coach. He has built a program up just from ashes. The Duke football program, as we said, was the laughingstock of the ACC, and they're really just not that anymore. And Miami, tough break. They had a great season going, but it really is Duke's time to shine. They definitely have the best team in that part of the ACC, and that's really all there is to say about them. They've been playing well. The scoreboard shows it. They're way more consistent, and their offense is just, I mean, it's potent. That's the only way to put it. They're playing well. They're scoring points. Their defense is sound. They're an all-around great team. And while they may not fare so well against Florida State in the ACC championship, this is definitely a team that has the number of anyone else they're playing. And the nice thing about Maryland beating Virginia Tech is that the winner of that game would have their destiny in their hands for the ACC championship. So with Duke's victory, all they need to do is beat Wake Forest and North Carolina, who they definitely can beat. I mean, they're a far better team, and they will have secured a spot to the ACC championship, which I think is fantastic for this Duke program. So, Mike, with the call on the SEC and the miracle at Jordan-Hare, I'll turn it back over to you for the call on my Auburn Tigers and their awesome game against Georgia.
Brian, this one was awesome. You know what? I'm just gonna flash forward to the flash forward. That's the right word there, to the fourth quarter, because this game was neck and neck most of the game, and then you're looking at a difference maker of a 73-yard Hail Mary tip ball. I mean, wow. You cannot ask for a crazier ending than that. I mean, when you think of a Hail Mary, you think of a ball that, got to the end zone, was tipped, and then, landed in, the fullback's hands who's, trailing these guys. That was not the case. Wide receiver double covered down the middle of the field. Ball's tipped in the air. Wide receiver catches it. Open lane to the end zone. Brian, wow. But one of the things I do want to highlight, I mean, you look at Auburn, great win for the program. They're on a collision course with Alabama going forward, with that Iron Bowl being a huge game. But I want to spotlight the fact that, Nick Marshall was outdueled, in my opinion, by Aaron Murray. Sorry, I'm getting my Jordan Lynch and my Aaron Murray's, confused there. But I want to point out the fact that, Aaron Murray played a great game. 4 total touchdowns. He had 2 passing, 2 rushing, 1 interception, and 452 total yards of offense. Nick Marshall, only about 318 total yards of offense with 3 total touchdowns. However, he did not turn the ball over. Brian, Aaron Murray, I feel so bad for this guy. I really do. I mean, you're looking at a guy, huge expectations going into this year, and he hasn't had that supporting cast. I mean, one would argue that, maybe if you're that good of a quarterback, you need a supporting cast. You don't need a supporting cast. But, I'm going to point to Tom Brady in the NFL. Brian, you're looking at a guy with Tom Brady, 3 Super Bowls, numerous MVPs, owns every passing record I think you can own out there. Still can't get it done, without Rob Gronkowski in that lineup every night, or, some of those other wide receivers that he's had. I mean, you can only be so good you can only be so good without a supporting cast. And I feel bad for Aaron Murray. I mean, he's been penalized a lot this year. 4 losses at Georgia, definitely not the way he expected it to go. We were set Georgia, Alabama on a collision course, going to be an epic SEC battle, rematch from last year. Wasn't the case. And my heart goes out to Aaron Murray. I mean, this will not kill his draft stock, by any means, I think. But it's just one of those fascinating things to see that he hasn't, it's sad. That's what it comes down to. I mean, he's lost numerous wide receivers. He's lost his Heisman running back. He's lost his Heisman backup running back. He's lost his wide receivers. I'm surprised he's not injured this year. In all of this and the curse of the Georgia Bulldogs, he's the one guy who's remained unscathed, and I think he's been penalized for it. So my heart goes out to this guy. But, Auburn, Brian, you cannot blow a 27-7 lead like your Tigers did against a Georgia Bulldog team, captained by Aaron Murray. But, going against Alabama, when you have Alabama down 27-7, you need to keep your foot on the gas pedal, and you need to do whatever it takes to score points on every drive, because Alabama will find a way to come back. They're just such a good team, Brian. So, you know what? It's not a scary thing by any means, I think, if you're a War Eagle fan. But I think it's just something to watch for. You gotta finish the game in that first half when you're up 27-7. Get those points, run down the clock, and you know what? I guarantee if you go into halftime, you talk to Auburn's head coach and you say, you know what, this game's going to be decided on a Hail Mary pass of 73 yards. He would have thought it was crazy. You know what? But it's one of those things that you got to keep in perspective. 27-7, you got to keep your foot on the gas pedal. So I think I wouldn't call it a weakness for Auburn, but I think that going forward against Alabama, you got to improve upon it. And Brian, it's that old adage: better to be lucky than good sometimes. As Auburn was really lucky this week, and they'll live to fight another day. And you know what? Sometimes you need that luck, to go far in this BCS race. So it'll be really cool. And as an Auburn fan, I want to hear your opinion. I mean, this was a huge game, huge victory for that program.
Yeah, I mean, the Auburn program, I think, has really been turned around. I mean, Gus Malzahn, I think, is one guy who can stand up next to Nick Saban. He's just been coaching such a great program. And while I did have faith in Gene Chizik, he just couldn't get it done without those awesome players like Cam Newton. But besides that, one of the things that I've noticed about this Auburn team is that they feed on momentum like none other. Because I don't know if you watched the Auburn-Tennessee game, but what happened in there is that Tennessee had the momentum early, and then what happened is that Auburn got a couple good runs. They got a punt return for a touchdown, and then they were just gone. There was no stopping them, and if Alabama can keep them from getting momentum, then Auburn won't stand a chance. That's one of the huge concerns I have with this Auburn team, is because they only lost the momentum to the Georgia Bulldogs, and it almost cost them dearly, even though I do believe Aaron Murray did not get that touchdown. I'm just putting it out there. I think I saw his knee down. I do think there was disputable video evidence, but I'm not the one making the calls.
You know what? And it's just, Auburn, hats off to them. I mean, you look at a program last year, Gene Chizik, just driving. I mean, that team was just terrible last year, the laughing stock of the SEC. Kind of the punching, you look at Nick Saban's personal punching bag. I mean, really, the SEC's punching bag they played terrible. Hats off to them for playing great, and I'm excited, Brian. I got a lot of friends and family down there who are on the War Eagle side of the Iron Bowl, so that'll be interesting. Won't doubt I'll be able to make my way down there for the game, as they're going to be hogging all the tickets. But you can guarantee I'm going to be watching. I'm all for the down with Alabama movement, chaos in the BCS. Let the small market team play. But it's going to be interesting. And you're looking at an Alabama team, Brian, that played terrible this week against Mississippi State. I mean, come on. You are the back-to-back BCS champion, and Mississippi State gives you the biggest challenge? What is this? I mean, what is this even real life? I mean, Alabama played terrible against Mississippi State. So if I'm looking at it, I think Alabama's stock has fallen a little bit. With that Auburn stock, it's going up. But, I looked at A.J. McCarron's stats, 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. Not kind of the game you would expect from a guy who's NFL-bound. But or just from a team that's won back-to-back national titles. So it'll be interesting. Alabama has weaknesses, and if they come out flat like they did against Mississippi State, Brian, anything can happen.
Yeah, Auburn and Alabama, those are two schools, and my sister, who's a senior, recently got accepted to. So I made a deal. If this video gets 200,000 likes and 10 million views by November 30th, then I'm going to the Iron Bowl. So I believe in all 14 of you who are subscribed to us as of now. Tell your friends of friends, and let's make this happen.
Let's make it happen. So, Brian, what game? That is the big question. What game are you covering this week? A lot of huge games on the slate. Give me your game. Go.
All right, Mike. So one of the big upset games that we have to be looking at is Chattanooga, Alabama. Chattanooga is the best team in the FCS aside from several other teams, but I texted you a long chain of teams of this team beat this team that proves that Chattanooga is better than Oregon, and therefore this game should be awesome. And if you didn't get the sarcasm in that voice, I'm sorry. The game I'm actually going to be covering is Arizona State UCLA. This game has huge implications on who's going to make the Pac-12 championship. If Arizona State wins, then it's basically theirs, and if UCLA wins, then they have Coach O and the USC team coming up against them in the final week to make it in. This is just a huge game that has huge implications on a huge conference, And I think the Pac-12 is very balanced this year. I mean, you do have Oregon sort of ahead of the pack, but they did show a bit of defensive weakness and a bit of offensive slowness against Utah last week. And I do think that whoever goes up against them, it won't be a blowout. It'll be a very good game, even if it's UCLA again.
Brian, I totally agree. I mean, this Pac-12 this year has not turned out, I think, the way has wanted. I mean, you had USC at the beginning of the year slumping. Now their stock is rising. Oregon lost, showing weakness. Stanford has lost twice. I mean, which is unheard of. I mean, you're looking at Lee Corso's preseason pick to win it all this year. So, and then you look at USC, underwhelmed amazingly, underplayed, amazingly at the beginning of the year. Now has achieved those expectations, has regressed a little bit. So this Pac-12, Brian, you would not have expected it to be wide open. You would expect, Oregon, Stanford, collision course, BCS championship, Pac-12 championship game. It's going to happen, but that's not the case this year. And, it's an interesting storyline to point out that Stanford, that this Pac-12 has just, it's been in limbo this year. And, it's kind of been anyone's division, I think.
Yeah. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about your game for next week.
Okay, Brian, we talk about signature wins with quarterbacks. You had Jameis Winston down in Clemson and Miami. Now, Bryce Petty, this is your time to shine. If you want to leap into the stratosphere of the Heisman race, you have got to beat Oklahoma State, number 10, against your number 4 Baylor Bears. Brian, this one is going to be hot. I am following College Game Day here. I'm going to do my own little prediction, little preview right now. This game is going to be awesome, Brian. I'm expecting high scoring game. Both of these offenses scored, immense, so many points. Great offenses. Brian, we're on a collision course here. This is going to be a great game. I think winner leapfrogs, if Baylor wins, they leapfrog Ohio State, go into that 3 spot and make an interesting case to play in the national championship game. Although I don't think, Jameis Winston and those Florida State Seminoles show any signs of letting up. So Brian, I'm really psyched for this one. This is one of the games that I can really get excited about. Bryce Petty and Baylor, if you want to step onto that national stage, want to be in New York for that as a Heisman finalist, I think you got to do it and you got to win against Oklahoma State.
Yeah, if you look at some of the top 5 teams, some of them like Ohio State, it's basically coasting out. They closed the season against a horrible Michigan team. The only reason they won last week is because Northwestern needed to find new ways to lose Big Ten games. But Ohio State's going to win out because they have a super easy schedule, and Florida State's going to win out because they're taking on Florida. And who are they have next week? Do you know?
It's Florida, and then Brian. I've looked at the schedule of this team. I couldn't name off the top of my head who they're playing next week, but I'm telling you, it's someone really easy. This Florida State team has a really balanced schedule. They had a lot of easy teams to begin with, then had that hard part of their schedule, a couple tough teams in a row there. But they can just coast to the ACC championship game. It's not like Jameis Winston and company show any signs of slipping up down the road.
Yeah, if you look at it, Alabama and Baylor are the 2 teams that still have to finish a season, proving that they still can do what they do. Baylor still has some Big Ten games to play against very tough opponents, and of course Alabama has the looming Iron Bowl, and it's really going to determine who's going to play in the BCS, really separating the men from the boys.
Exactly. It's going to be a great game, Brian. And then, one to keep on your radar is Johnny Manziel taking on LSU, number 12 against number 23. Not a lot of huge implications on either side. It's Auburn, Alabama, all the way in that SEC championship game. But you're looking at 2 guys, Johnny Manziel and Zach Mettenberger, who are auditioning for NFL teams right now as we speak. And, this game will be, I can guarantee there's going to be a ton of scouts there. Hopefully, my Minnesota Vikings will, flood the stands with their own scouts. I'm hoping that Manziel becomes a Viking come draft day in April. But this is going to be really interesting. This big subplot here, auditioning for NFL teams. These are 2 quarterbacks who are destined to play on Sundays. So that's going to be really cool. And, I'm expecting a great game. Not a lot of pressure here. At this point, you're just playing. You're playing for fun. You're playing for stats. And you're just playing to get better.
Your Vikings recruiters should be fine as long as they don't wear purple. That may not go over well.
Definitely would not go over well down there in College Station. So Brian, great week of games coming up here. I'm really excited. You got great games. I got great games. It was actually tough to choose between games this week. You listed off a bunch of them. But Baylor, Oklahoma State, I mean, that's going to be a great one. And your game, of course, it's going to be amazing. So a lot of huge implications. And, we talk about this a lot, the what-if game. I mean, what if the BCS had ended last year and we have that 14 playoff this year? I mean, we would be on a collision course for that right now. I mean, you're looking at Baylor, Ohio State, Alabama, and Florida State. I mean, that's an amazing Final Four, if you ask me, and that makes for some really enticing matchups. But it's not going to be the case this year. Baylor and Ohio State will probably be, sectioned off to the Fiesta Bowl or, something like that. So it's kind of a bummer to see. But, I'm looking forward to the BCS next year, and I'm looking forward to the slate of games this week.
Yeah, so thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next week. I'm Brian Hasenbottle.
And I'm Mike Carlson. We'll see you guys later.
This has
Let's
been
go,
the G
Jameis
from-
Winston.
See you.